Welcome to my virtual campfire. I'm Crystal Kelly. In Season 2, I am exploring with you as masters of our own experience in an epic and unique time in the history of conscious life. We are all being called to do something unknown. I'm turning to the ancient wisdom when fire was the quantum shift that catapulted humanity. Now, we are the shift. When we connect consciously, we are connected with the new Earth. We become the new Earth human family. Through vibrations and conversation, let's enter this superhighway of consciousness and co-create within the quantum realm of light.
I'm really excited to talk to you guys today. I'm talking to Bob and Laura Antone of Hidden Northwest Tours. Bob is an author, a historian, and a paranormal researcher from North Bend, Washington, and a longtime family history in the area of North Bend. You and Bob and Laura lead historical and paranormal tours, which I cannot wait to hear about. From Bigfoot to UFO sightings, missing time, and cursed haunted locations, you two collect stories from hidden corners of the Pacific Northwest. And I know, as born and raised third generation Seattleite, I know that the Pacific Northwest is full of lots of activity. So I'm excited. Your research is compiled into a book co-written and available on Amazon, and I'll have the link on the podcast episode. It's called The Odd Man Up. And you have also set up a Patreon page featuring virtual videos and blog entries, which I have to say you have over 101 posts on that. So very worthwhile to subscribe to that. And I'll also have a link for that. And Laura, you're a registered member of the Dene First Nations. And so you guys focus on history and cultural understanding from an Indigenous point of view, namely, we're all related. So welcome, Bob and Laura. I am so excited to talk to you. And I think, why don't we just start off? To me, storytelling is what I live for. I love sitting around and telling good stories. And from all of your experience, you must have a wealth of stories. So I'm going to let you start with your favorite, or what's hitting you today. What's, where's the energy at today?
All right. So Laura nudged me on the knee. She wants me to go first, which is fine. I love telling stories. So in this same living room, when I was a little boy, I used to sit here with my grandparents and listen to hours of storytelling. And so my passion comes from my family heritage. My grandfather hopped trains. He lived in hobo camps and logging camps in the Pacific Northwest. I grew up with stories, tall tales. I heard accounts of Bigfoot, UFOs, ghosts, mysterious angelic beings in the woods, portals. My grandmother was a nurse and she worked out of Seattle. Her first job was in 1930. She came out to North Bend, but my grandfather was already here in the valley in the 20s. The 1920s. As you know, this is a location known for the film sites connected to Twin Peaks and Twin Peaks Fire Walk with Me, all 3 seasons of the TV show plus the film. I have a passion for storytelling because I believe it connects us to, our ancestors, and everybody comes from somewhere. And I think, and I believe that especially children, as it was for me, are positively affected by directly connecting with ancestral stories, storytelling, where they came from, hearing about the hardships, hearing about the trials and tribulations of generations before them. It makes you a more well-rounded person. It helps you see spiritually in a broader sense. You appreciate life And so that's where I'm coming from in general. And I'm sure you can relate to that.
Well, yeah, and one thing I want to kind of set the stage for people who aren't familiar with North Bend is that North Bend is you're very close to nature. I mean, you're surrounded by old growth trees. You're in these beautiful mountains that have like granite cliffs. I'm thinking of Mount Si, just like that huge granite face of the mountain looking at you. It's, it's a, nature is speaking to you out there. And how does that tie in, do you think, with these myths and stories and different things that have been passed down? How do you think that nature and all of this paranormal activity is related?
So I'll start answering that question, and then I'm going to defer to Laura at the very end. But just so you know, there were so many different people that came here from all over the world, and they worked side by side in the timber industry. So many folks were surviving together, and they went through so many things. And some of those troubles are not written down. They're oral histories. Survival was a commonality. So when you're surviving the elements, you're surviving the harsh conditions on the job, just trying to stay alive and pay the bills and have something to eat every day. That transcends the color of skin and your background and who you are and where you're from. Everybody's working together in that industry. So one thing, first and foremost, is the heritage of the area are voices from multiple perspectives. It's not just a native voice. It's not just, white Southerners that came here and worked in the woods, or, all American voices. It's not any one particular voice. It's all combined. Everything's connected. And there are stories on both sides of the fence, native and non-native, that are just as inspiring and just as powerful and just as amazing. And we're all human beings walking on the same plane of existence. We're breathing the same air. We all bleed red, and our souls, our bodies are made up the same way, So what happens to us, traumatic or happy, could be a very wonderful memory that makes an impression on the land. And, Laura has been talking about that lately. And I think this is a good time to kind of have her talk about those specifics a little bit, because, yeah.
So my family actually traveled quite a bit overseas and up through Canada and through Europe when I was growing up. And I just realized when I came to the Northwest, it seemed like it had a commonality of some, very mysterious things that basically just kind of, I think it came from the people that came from those hardships, where they had to be able to learn how to be able to band together to be able to survive. But there's a lot of tragedy that also came from that. I think the harshest areas do actually, kind of, they kind of manifest some of these hardships, and people tend to hang on to a lot of the different feelings and loss of family members and friends. And so for this area in North Bend, I think it does. There's a certain area that people came together. They had to survive, and sometimes they didn't. And then you have the hardships, and you have just this growing, I don't know what you would call it. Melancholy, sort of
doom, gloom, sadness.
Yeah. So again, like, you would have to be able to have these same people to be able to also come out of this feeling of negativity to be able to survive. Again, like, it's you have to be able to kind of come out of your depression or come out of your sadness to be able to continue on with life. So I mean, it's very, like, you do get a very when you're driving down the road, or you're walking through the forest, or you're walking by the river, you get some pockets of areas where you just get a stinking feeling. But then you could walk 10 feet or 20 feet from there and feel just lightheartedness. Sometimes you feel kind of laughter, or just a certain amount of innocence. It's just really bizarre, really strange. Both of us have kind of felt it.
Yeah, so that process that you're talking about, I call that, and I've been taught that it's transmutation. So the places sometimes with the highest energy, you can't have light without dark. So there's going to be tension. And when you have high elevations of energy, like I believe you have in North Bend, with high mountain areas, there's going to be a tension. And I think that I do believe that what we're doing now in this phase of humanity and this level of consciousness that we're talking about, connecting and helping each other survive, is I think that we're co-creating a new reality. And I believe that the work that you guys do, and even the cataloging, because I find there are so many people that are very analytical, and if it's not proven with numbers or something, then they might not believe it. And what you're talking about, Laura, is something you feel. Like you can't quantify that low energy in one place and then you're euphoric. Then like you can't explain it other than you feel it. And so, like, for some people, they want those numbers, but I think what you guys have cataloged, and the research and just sharing of stories that you're doing, is helping people along that journey, and hopefully to join that realm of possibility where anything's possible.
Yeah, there are also cases where multiple witnesses see the same thing, and and when that happens, that is a form of proof and documentation. So, like, especially if you have a family on one side of the street, and then you have perfect strangers driving down the road, and then you have another stranger up on a hillside, and all of those people who don't know each other see the same thing or experience the same thing. Mm-hmm. That is a form of proof in the paranormal community. I mean,
yeah.
You can analyze that as a detective and say, well, why would they make that up at the same time in the same place? And we've got a lot of those stories.
That's amazing.
The other thing too is full apparitions. I mean, people will see a full apparition, and and it's sometimes photographed, and sometimes you get recordings on tape or on digital recorder of voices from beyond or wherever you might think they're from. They might be a deceased person, or it could be a supernatural being that is speaking or making its presence known. There are a lot of things in this world that we don't understand. And, every day there are miracles. Every single day, you see it all around you in this universe. It's just beautiful. And when you say supernatural, it's an occurrence that is out of the norm, something that, but what's ironic is that we are surrounded by miracles all the time. It's just when something that we haven't seen before, something that seems bigger and grander or more powerful or unusual appears, we call that supernatural. But supernatural is all the time. I mean, we are living in this mysterious universe,
Yeah, I agree. I think this is a supernatural experience, being alive. I know so many people don't use telepathy, and they don't maybe even believe in things like remote viewing, or there's just so many claircognizant abilities our brain has, and I think that when you test and you stretch people's imaginations, that starts to open up their mind to new possibilities. So I would love to hear some stories that, or a story that really stretches people's imagination or maybe makes them think differently.
We have a few doppelganger stories here at the house. and maybe Laura would like to talk about the time that you saw the doppelgangers.
Oh God.
There's 2 of them that you have. Is that okay?
Actually, I've got there's actually 4 altogether, but I will choose probably maybe 1. So this was back in, what would you say, it was like 2014, I think. I'm not quite sure. I just the whole thing kind of really tripped me out. Anyway, so I was at home. It was one of our days off, and there's a lot of times where the neighboring property used to actually belong to Bob's parents. They had these rentals next door. They were like these old cabins. They're still there, but anyway, so lots of times we would go over, we'd help maintain, we'd kind of hang out with his dad, and we'd, make sure that the property is, up to par, and, make sure the renters were happy. So there was one time I know that Bob and his dad had planned a trip over to Cleellum, so Eastern Washington. So I was thinking, okay, well, that gives me some time to kind of, just, clean the house or do whatever I need to go do, kind of catch up. Nobody was in the house. So I was thinking, okay, yeah, great. I've got a plan. So, they're in the driveway. They're talking about where they're going to go, what's going to happen. I knew that they were going to be gone for, at least a few hours. So then I see both of them kind of, I see them both climbing in the truck, and they're head off. I'm waving, and so they left, and I'm kind of doing my own thing. It was maybe, I don't know, it could have been 30 minutes, maybe 40 minutes at most. And I just said, I gotta clean the kitchen, just get that out of the way. So I'm in the kitchen, I'm looking out the window, because most of the time, I'm not really paying attention washing the dishes. I was more so looking outside, because from the kitchen window you can see like mountains and trees, and so it's a lot better than just staring at some dirty dishes. So
Yeah,
I'm staring out.
Beautiful out there.
And it's out over like our driveway is right in front of the kitchen, so I'm clearly able to see from the beginning to the end of the driveway, and I can see anybody that's walking up to the front door, the back door, or anybody that's kind of in and around the yard. So I literally, in the corner of my eye, I see Bob walking up, but he's not wearing the same clothes that he was wearing when he left. And I was thinking, okay, that's really odd. I was like, what are they doing back so soon? And I was thinking, well, maybe they forgot something. Thinking that maybe they're out, parked out in the front of the house where I couldn't really see. So I just, I kind of decided I knew that he was going to come in. He was just going to tell me, what they forgot or whatever. So I'm kind of like, I see him walking past, and he had kind of this glazed look over his face. And I'm kind of like trying to get his attention, and he's not acknowledging that I'm there. And he walks past, and I'm waiting for him to come through the back door. And I don't hear anything, and I don't hear the shop door open, and I'm looking at the shop door. I don't see him. I don't hear him in the back, and I'm thinking, what the heck is he doing? So I'm maybe like a minute or so, I just kind of dried my hands, and I'm kind of like looking at the window. I'm looking up and down the driveway. I go outside. I'm looking for him. And I was just kind of, what was that? I don't see the truck. He's nowhere to be found. And it was truly bizarre. So then I was like, I just couldn't make any sense of it, really. So then it was a few hours later that he came back, and, I could hear the truck's door close and his dad driving off. And he comes walking up the driveway, and he's wearing the same clothes that he left in. And I was so confused. I was like, why would he change?
Yeah.
Why would he change in the truck?
Yeah, we never came back. So
and I asked him,
it was a duplicate of me.
And I said, did you come back for anything? He said, no.
No.
And
So
then,
that was in here.
and then I told him, I saw you and you were wearing, I believe it was like a black t-shirt with blue jeans, and he ended up leaving in
Work clothes, dirty clothes. Yeah.
Well, it was Carhartts, like these greenish, Carhartts, and like a different t-shirt.
Yeah.
And
so I call that like a glitch in the matrix. It's like you saw a parallel life, like you're going and you saw a parallel life for like a split second, but then you fell back into like, so it's like, I don't know. That's a really trippy, like mind warping experience. What did you think, Bob, when she told you what she saw?
Well, it wasn't the first time in this house or around the property that things like that have happened.
Okay.
I'll give you an example. There's just something about this house. There's a bedroom right over here. And when I was 12 years old, I used to come and spend the night at Grandma and Grandpa's house.
Uh-huh.
And I remember waking up. Actually, I was awake. I was reading a book, and all of a sudden I saw this flash at the end of the bed toward the hallway, and I saw a person standing there that kind of looked like a relative of mine, but I wasn't sure who it was, but it looked like an Antone, looked like someone who was related to me, but much older. And I saw this flash of a person staring at me while I was laying in the bed. And then, this was years ago when I was 12 years old. It was 1986. Okay. So fast forward to the 2000, I think it was 2012. 2012, I'm in that room and I'm standing in this one spot, and I look over and suddenly I see myself in the bed that's no longer there as a 12-year-old boy, and I'm looking at myself, and I realized that I had the flash of the memory when I was 12.
Yeah.
And then all of a sudden in this living room, I heard a voice say, "Hi," right here in midair, "Hi." And then all of a sudden the voice went right up to my ear and said, "Hi." And those are things that happen in this property. And that's pretty spooky. So that's like a time loop. I saw myself when I was 12, looking at myself when I was 30 something, and vice versa. So that's creepy.
It's like there could be a portal in your house, or like a time warp or something. Like, I could think of so many stories that would just be so fun to try to figure out what's going on, because it's like a time machine.
Well, we've had a lot of traditional folks here from different, backgrounds, and have done traditional ceremonies of different kinds. We participated, and more than one of the so-called, tradition bearers, I call them tradition bearers, they said that this house had a portal or had an opening. Yeah. And all of them agreed at its location. So that is very specific, very specific. Yep.
Yeah. No, that I believe that from those experiences, you just, I'm sure, it's kind of amazing. I was at a talk one time in Santa Clara, and it was the founder of or the creator of Ancient Aliens. He was talking about like his vision and how he came up with the story, like, and the concept of the show. And it was like a black tie event, and there were people sitting at a circle, and the table that we were at, there was a girl that said she grew up in a home that was her grandmother's home. And in the basement of that home, they would very, very often, and every person in her family had this experience, had met a being. And some of the beings looked the same and some didn't. And they had, and so she said that she thought that house was a portal, and had been, told. So maybe that is kind of a similar situation. And thinking of the electromagnetic grid and how it maybe conceptually works, I think any high elevation area like North Bend would be a good conductor of energy like that.
We also have aquifers under our feet. And so there are giant underground lakes and rivers So because of the glaciers that melted, over thousands of years, they settled under the ground. And so actually we have enough water under our feet to supply Everett, Tacoma, and Seattle for 100 years. We have aquifers of that magnitude. Now, as you know, water is a conduit of electricity, obviously, but energy of all kinds, water. I mean, everybody knows that. And so what was explained to us is that the reason that the Snoqualmie Valley in particular is such a place of healing traditionally is because of the amount of water that is under our feet and all around us, because it's also the second most rainiest spot. Forks, Washington is number 1. North Bend is number 2 in the state of Washington. So you have rain coming down all around us, overcast, and you have water under our feet. So that is what makes our place so special, because I think it amplifies those memories and feelings. It actually amplifies feelings. A lot of people will say that when they come here, they either feel really heavy or they feel really elated, happy. It's like whatever you're feeling, it amplifies it. It turns up the volume. And I've noticed that when we'll drive away from here, we'll go east of the mountains, we'll feel like something light, it just releases off our shoulders. It's just like, oh my God, it's so light. We're in Ellensburg suddenly, and it's like, this feels so great. I could fly. Oh my God. Because North Bend is pretty serious stuff. There's a lot going on here.
Your geographic location is amazing. There was when I went to the University of Washington, they have something called the Experimental College. I took a class from a feng shui master, and he had come from China. He was retired, but had come from China after studying the globe, just studying the entire planet and measuring where energy is the highest. And he specifically moved to Seattle to be near one of the highest energy places in the world, he said. And I remember he had the choice between one of 2 places, and I can't remember what the other one was, but he chose Seattle. And when he explained that energy in Seattle, it has to do with the mountains are a ring of fire because they're all volcanoes. And then you have that water element underneath that's so powerful. So it's really just like we were talking about before, that yin and yang, that light and dark, that's like.
On that same note, in 1986, my cousin was the port commissioner of Seattle. Now, we were invited to the grand opening of a Buddhist temple, which is located about 3 miles from our house here. Mm-hmm. And we went to the grand opening, and I got to meet the monks and the head monk of this monastery with my grandparents. It was me and my grandfather, John, and my grandmother, Ella. And in the backyard, there were little multicolored shacks along the fence line. And I asked the question, what are those little buildings for? And the head monk, he smiled and he said, each little room goes to another world, another dimension, and we travel to various dimensions. And then he went on to say that the mountains in the Snoqualmie Valley are supernatural beings, and had called him when he lived in China. He received a message from these supernatural beings that told him to come and build a monastery here in the Snoqualmie Valley. This is 1986, and I remind you that is before Twin Peaks existed. Now, Twin Peaks, they weren't even filming until 1989. This is 3 years before 1986. So it was already known, and it goes back thousands of years. It's already known that this place is very special. But that really, I think, ties in with what you said, and it basically verifies, on a spiritual level, coming from a religious organization just up the street, exactly what you just said about the energy in the mountains around here, mm-hmm. and that they are considered beings. And he also used the term, in my language, I cannot, tell you those names, mm-hmm. like they're secret names, mm-hmm. but the native people here obviously had their own names for the mountains. And speaking of that, which I'm going to just say real quickly, there is an ancestral lands movement, and it is run by local tribal community, and we support it. We're part of the tribal community just because we're well connected. But the ancestral lands movement, it's very important to talk about this, because they are demanding, they are asking for respect when people hike on their sacred mountains around here. So Mount Si is a big tourist draw. There are thousands of people that come, millions of people come here, you know what I mean? And they see the Snoqualmie Falls, they hike all over the trails. Part of what ancestral lands movement is doing is they're fighting back, and they're saying, hey, these are our sacred places, and you need to clean up your trash. And you need, when you hike on our mountain, which is ancient, and it is a supernatural being, you need to respect our history and not treat it like, you know, something discardable. You need to tread lightly and have respect. And so I wanted to give a shout out. If folks are interested and they want to support the ancestral lands movement, Snoqualmie tribe, go for it. Go onto their website. You can Google it. You'll find it very quickly.
I'll find the link and I'll put it on the podcast so that it's easy to access for people, because that's super important. It's you know, when anytime you go into someone's home, you respect their things and their, you know, you don't like put your feet on someone's couch unless that's the way they live, you know, like, but you respect their rules. And so when we enter a natural habitat, that, you know, we need to respect the land, and we need to respect that we are a visitor here, and we are a part of it as well. And I think that's the disconnect that modern life kind of has for some people, is that they don't feel connected to the land anymore because maybe lack of ceremony or lack of storytelling, lack of knowledge, you know. So that's why these conversations are so important, because you know, you have to walk up to a tree and talk to it. I mean, when I was in high school, my dad called me a damn tree hugger, and I would kind of laugh, you know, like he didn't get it at all. And all I wanted to do was spend time in nature, and it just felt so natural. And you know, trees are kind of the antenna to the universe. Like what's way up there, you know, it's coming down. I don't know. That's just the way I see it.
I agree. And my wife and I we feel like there are sacred moments in simplicity, like, you know, the love for your children. Like, you know, you have daughters. The love of a mother for a child is so powerful. The love and admiration I have for my grandparents, that is power. That is connection. It doesn't have to be exotic from another land, is what I'm trying to say. Like, we all have power in the simple connections that we have in our life. And it doesn't have to be, you know, a ceremony that we learned in the jungles of Brazil. It doesn't have to be. It just has to, we have to recognize what we already have. And what I have with the stories and what we have, you know, it's enough. It's more than enough. And those simple things, and just like unconditional love for your family, or sacrificing yourself for another, like a veteran does, you know, like someone who dies in battle during a war. I mean, these are things that are full of power. These stories of our wars that we fought, and relatives that we've lost, Korea, Vietnam, you know, World War II, World War I, you know, all those things have power. You know, the logging industry, the railroads, every part of our Northwest history, we have connections, we're connected. And when we can tie into that, those simple connections are ceremonies. We don't have to study, you know, abroad in, you know, with the Australian Aborigines. We don't have to go to Russia and Siberia and learn some kind of secret language of, you know, speaking to demons or whatever we're going to do. We have what we need right here. That's something I wanted to share with you. That's my belief.
Yeah.
And I like that, because it really grounds people. They're like, wow, I already have something. Oh my God. And then they start looking inward, and they start cataloging their own family history. And in that pursuit, they realize that their life is much richer and more beautiful than they ever thought it was. And they don't have to look outward necessarily to another culture. You know, they can, and that's fine, and be connected and honor that. But they can say, wow, look what I have right here. It's inside of me already. you know, and I think that's my message that I wanted to share with you today. So
I think it's beautiful. Yeah. It's I read something one time where someone said, and it might have been a monk, or I can't remember who said it, but it said, if you really want to make a difference, pick your little corner of the world and make it the best corner that you can. And so I've always thought, you know, very community oriented, like even to the point, like I always volunteer at my kids' school. And
yeah.
It's not just to say that I do it, it's because those kids are our future. You know, they're the ones that will come up with the solutions that will be more forward thinking than what we can. But it's our job to give them tools to use their creativity in a way that is for positive change, and to kind of change the direction, to transmute all the negative and turn it into that power.
I mean, like you were talking about earlier, there's always dark and light. You know, there's always a dark side and a light side. You know, there's been a lot of attempts at utopia, you know, people trying to create a perfect society without war and that kind of thing. And you can look through documented history that every single one of those utopian experiments, somehow there was a little, you know, wrench in the machine, or there was a fly in the computer and just something goes wrong, right? And it's part of the fabric of our universe, just like you were saying earlier. There's always dark and light, and there's a balance. So there's always going to be some kind of conflict.
Yeah.
And you know, I love your positive outlook, and I agree. Like everything you're doing, everything you're saying, I totally agree with you. As far as getting rid of war, oh my God, I don't know if it's possible. That's a really.
I don't think it's possible. I honestly don't. Yeah. I agree with you. I think that so a natural pattern, like, so say like the bark of a tree, the pattern is not, it's not regular. It looks very irregular. So if you were to just take a little cross section, you wouldn't see maybe a pattern at all. You know, like, especially if it's a big tree, you wouldn't see it like, so I guess my point is that the natural way of the universe isn't always make perfect sense from a close-up perspective. So it's not until you like stand back and you see why things happen. You know what I'm saying? Like, something might seem negative, but then in the future it's positive, and you know, so timing kind of. So yeah, I don't think war can actually go away, because, you know, there's always going to be forest fires to, you know, get all the dead fall down. And, you know, that a forest fire is a natural part of forest management, but, you know, they're just, when it's out of control, it's a little different. You know, there's a tipping in one way or another. Friends went to high school in North Bend, and I went to high school in Enumclaw. And I believe the way I feel about Enumclaw is really almost exactly the same that I feel about North Bend. It has the same energy. I think it must be on the same like line or something, because I feel the same way. And I know that in Enumclaw, at the base of Mount Rainier, we have a lot of UFO sightings. Do you have that in North Bend?
Yes. In fact, we had a major sighting last 2 weeks ago, and there were multiple witnesses. And we do know the lady that took photos and was a witness, but she said there were 7 other people there that were photographing this object. Now, what's interesting about it, she described a crown that was hovering in the sky. It was like a crown. Just like you'd see a king or a queen wearing a crown, kind of a shape. And it was just beautiful and just radiant. And there were people taking all kinds of photos. And we were really surprised, because you don't see anything on social media. There was a few mentions like, oh, there was an unidentified flying object seen, da 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 da. But there were all these people taking photos on their phones. You'd think that they would have all posted those pictures.
Yeah.
So it's very mysterious that they didn't. But my grandfather that lived in this house in 2002, this was right before he passed away, he walked out of the back door and looked to the east, And he said he saw a crown hovering in the sky in 2002. And he described nine gem-like glowing objects above this crown shape. So he said 9, and he actually came in and he drew a picture of what he saw in the sky. And I found it very interesting that 2 weeks ago that this object was described as a crown. Now we have not yet seen the photograph of this object from 2 weeks ago, but we are looking forward to it.
Are you wondering if it'll look like your grandpa's drawing?
I am wondering that, yes.
Yeah, that's the first thing that popped into my mind. I'm like, wow, I wonder if it's the same, because you know, maybe there's I see mountain areas as like stations, you know, like say train stations or something. And so like in my mind, I've made up this story of they're just different ports. So different people from different parts of the universe come in and, you know, they station at Mount Shasta or Mount Rainier, or, you know, like all these different places. I don't know. It's a silly story.
I love it. Yeah, so there are orbs of light seen on Mount Si here. Laura has talked to folks that have seen orbs, and we've seen lights, mysterious lights on the mountain. So
orbs in the bottom of Snoqualmie Falls.
Oh,
Trees, and like in the trees.
there was a large orange blob of light seen at the base of Snoqualmie Falls. And what's interesting about that is in the late 1960s, early 70s, there was a major sighting over Mount Si of, again, a large orange blob of light, a very similar description. And apparently this object landed, and local people here know of the landing site, where it was. One thing I will say is there are fault lines. Now, I've talked to other people, we've talked to other people, right, that have talked about fault lines being connected to orbs of light, and that somehow it might be a scientific explanation that certain energy is released from that fault line, so that these orbs, this phenomenon is seen all along the fault line. Now we have a fault line that goes right through the center of the valley, and it goes through Mount Si.
Yeah, that makes sense.
Very well could be a scientific explanation there for that.
Yeah, the Earth has electromagnetic particles, and I'm sure along fault lines those things change, and things in the air could change, especially with higher elevation. Maybe. Yeah, I could totally see. Not a scientific person, clearly, but I could see how that would be explainable.
Mount Si used to be an ancient volcano. Is that correct?
Yep.
And then of course, like Mount Rainier, Mount Adams. I mean, they're all, you know, they're all volcanoes. Which everybody, I don't know, since 8th grade science, I mean, you kind of learn that the volcanoes are connected, just kind of like, you know, the underground rivers.
Yeah, they're all connected.
They're all connected.
If one erupts, they can all erupt. Yeah, just like back to your point with this gentleman that moved to Seattle, talking about the ring of fire and the energy that's here.
Yeah.
I mean, you listen to Nirvana, you listen to like some of the music that came out of this area. And I mean, Nirvana has this explosive energy in the music. I love Nirvana. Oh my God.
I do too. I'm a huge fan.
I feel that energy, the reason that people are like, wow, that's like distinct, that's like a distinct flavor, it's the ring of fire. It's also the moody, overcast darkness that, you know, in Aberdeen and Enumclaw, for instance, in North Bend and Forks, this overcast, this oppressive feeling, and it just erupts in that music. The whole grunge scene, but Nirvana especially was, and Soundgarden too had that sound and vibe. I think those two bands for me, you know, that really summed up the ring of fire and the energy of the Pacific Northwest. So
yeah, I think for me, the music transmutes it's the process of healing that heaviness, you know, because we have to do something. It is heavy here. I mean, there's no doubt about it. Like, you have to be a really strong person to survive in the Northwest. Like, and I think that the fact that our music is so profound sometimes is just, it's no surprise to me, because I feel like music and vibrations can help heal, and so that's what it's doing for our entire community and our entire region, and then when you heal yourself, you can help heal the earth, and it can just keep going out from there.
Like we were talking about the balance between like the positive and negative. So I was thinking, Snoqualmie Falls is extremely well known. Like I don't know anybody who doesn't know where it is. You know what I mean? So to be able to actually get back to like the orbs of light, the funny thing is that you have, again, like what I was saying before, you have the tragic versus, some of the positive and the laughter and the families coming together and they're vacationing and people are having a good time. But there has been a number of tragic moments that revolve around the falls. There's a native story where there's two neighboring tribes, and one asked the other tribe to be able to come and join them for potlatch, and basically they were enemies. So it was actually a trick, and there's a center rock that's right there when you're actually looking out over the falls. And there was a man that stood out there and said, "Come over, yeah, let's have a party." And like these people were coming down from the upper part of the falls, and they didn't realize that there was a drop off, and a number of the other tribe perished. There's been a number of suicides, attempted suicides. I mean, it's just unusually strange, because you do there's pockets in around the falls where you do kind of walk through them, and you can definitely feel them for sure. I think that's part of the draw when it comes to the music. It's not only that, Robert has actually, he's revamped a lot of the historical songs to the area where, you take the originals and they're kind of very, to the time, they're very simple, very kind of straightforward. They're out there to be able to tell a story, but now, we're in the 2021, 22 here, and it's kind of like people are so used to so many different kinds of music. So of course, like when he revamps them, I mean, it's pretty incredible, because he inspires people to be able to look into history and find out more about the area and the history of the area and who is he talking about, and just all sorts of different stories from the 1800s all the way up to like 1992. I mean, so it's just one of those things where, again, you get inspired, and you don't want to be able to kind of you don't want to sedate it. You don't necessarily want to be able to kind of like, no, you have to stay over here and just, keep it down. No.
That doesn't work. For artists, that doesn't work. Yeah. Because if the second you give them a rule, they already shut their creativity down. So artists don't listen to rules most of the time. So it's like, it's almost better if you don't give them any rules, because then they just truly have a safe place to create. And
so we do Hidden Northwest tours as well. So, I mean, when we actually have a group gather together, and we do try to be able to start out, we do talk to everybody. We do kind of hear stories along the walk, and people will open up to me, and they'll definitely, they always open up to Bob a lot of the time. And, I would say maybe the first 20 minutes to half an hour into the tour, people are kind of, they're so used to going to other tours where you go, you just listen to the tour guide, and the tour guide just goes by a script, and sometimes it's in front of the person, sometimes they have it memorized, and it's the same tour. But every tour that we've done, even if it's repeat tours, we've always, it's always different. We just have so many different stories that we don't necessarily recycle the same ones. I mean, we've got, I think it's like 15 pages worth of stories, and half the time within the 3 hours of the tour, we'll only cover maybe about a quarter of the information. So, and then of course, like a lot of people do share things about that area. So then we will get permission from them to be able to incorporate their story into maybe the next tour. So we're constantly bringing in stories, and people are really opening up, and they're really wanting to be able to share, you know, what they believe in, whether or not they believe what they saw. I mean, it is. I mean, I know what you mean about creativity. If you allow people just to be comfortable, people are definitely most likely to be able to kind of open up and freely express themselves, for sure. I mean, that's half the reason why, you know, I think we are very, like we get really strange people. We'll get random people that will come up to our front door. We'll be working outside, and we'll get random, you know, people that will walk up our driveway, and, you know, sometimes they can be mean. You know, don't get me wrong. It's not all of it's been like a positive experience. But, even people that haven't been on the tours, we've bumped into people where, you know, Robert will go up to somebody, and because they'll be like, hey, what are you guys doing? And he'll walk up to them and just have a random conversation of like what we're doing. Oh, we're having a Bigfoot tour. Oh, that's really cool. And then then that person would be like, hey, I've got a Bigfoot story for you. So then like we're gathering stories like pretty much every time we have a tour. So it's fabulous. I mean,
it's amazing, because that is I think because you guys are amplifiers. So like you're by you telling stories, it's triggering other people to tell stories, and then you're cataloging them, so you're able to like what Bob was saying earlier about if 3 people saw the same thing, then that's kind of proof. So when you have like this catalog of information, and the way that you guys are presenting it is I mean, it could be proof for us one day. You know, I know I personally believe in Sasquatch or Bigfoot. I know when I was in Siberia, they call them almas, the almas, and they actually kind of more describe them as like a type of civilization, like a type of people, much less than an animal. Like they think they're sacred, and I think that I think in a way they're some sort of guardians. Curious to hear how you describe Bigfoot.
Okay, so the Dene in and around where my mother lives, they're kind of like 4 feet hairy looking things.
The Nukluck.
Yeah, the Nukluck. They are, you know, a somewhat of a guardians, you know. I'm trying to build, well, you know, the Salish also have a belief and have seen Sasquatch. I know that like when I was living in Africa as well, they would have a creature that definitely was kind of like a upright, sort of hairy, yes, human kind of looking person, but they knew that person or that animal was different, you know.
Yeah.
So I mean, it's I don't know, from all the places that I've lived. I mean, I've just heard random stories about a creature that's been very, very similar. But I do believe that Yeah, I do believe that they are protectors for the most part. Protectors of human beings, especially if people are, you know, vulnerable or in trouble. I mean, they are protectors of children. You've heard stories where children have gone missing in the forest, and like they'll show up and they're well fed.
Yeah. Yeah,
It's
I've heard those stories.
taken care of, you know what I mean? And
Yeah,
they just kind of reappear and they're just, they're fine.
yeah,
They're not malnutritioned, and it's which I find truly amazing. So I mean, I do feel that they are protectors for sure. Like, I mean, there are people that believe that they're like this vicious animal. You see some of those portrayals with the sharp teeth and like
yeah,
the really mean glowing eyes,
yeah.
sharp claws. Yeah. But
Well,
yeah.
I wonder, if they are protectors, then not all humans have good intentions. So maybe they're sometimes, if it seems like, because I've heard stories of like them throwing boulders down on people, or things like that, and maybe those people have not good intentions.
Yeah,
Maybe they were protecting from something else. I don't know.
yeah, I agree with that too. I mean, it definitely, there's a balance between the two. Yeah.
Yes. And so one of the things that we've come across, and one of our, I guess, theories that we're connected to, Sasquatch sightings in connection to serial killer activity. And so we have collected stories of encounters with Bigfoot, Sasquatch, where there are body dump sites, or where serial killers, murderers, rapists have been active. So there's something about the traditional belief that goes back thousands of years. You find this all over the earth, that these beings, I think they're supernatural beings, are awakened by a threat to innocence. So when women and children, or just anybody who's innocent, is being threatened, their life, or there's an act of murder, these beings will show themselves. And that seems to be a consistent cultural description all over the earth. Wherever this phenomenon is happening, there are stories in connection to, a violent act nearby. And so that's something that we've been taking note of and collecting, and especially in the Pacific Northwest, because you have Ted Bundy, you have the Green River Killer, you've got the truck stop killer used to come through here, you've got all kinds of crazy,
all sorts of them.
Yeah, you got them in Northern California there too. I mean, oh my God. And in fact, there was one gentleman that, I shouldn't say gentleman, but he used to use Bigfoot stories to lure women. Now, what's interesting about that is that he claimed to have actually encountered Sasquatch as well. But this guy was murdering women in Northern California. And I don't remember the name off the top of my head, and I wish I had my notes in front of me, but I'm sure you could probably find it. I could send you the message later of who this person was.
Yeah, I'll send you the story.
And it's a famous story. There's documentaries all over the web about it. But yeah, he was obsessed with Bigfoot. He used to tell young women Bigfoot stories to lure them. In fact, his last victim, that's what he did. He told her a bunch of Bigfoot stories, and she was like, oh my God. And then he had her in his grasp, and then he killed her. And she was like a park ranger in Northern California. But he actually claimed to have had encounters with Sasquatch. There was another serial killer who had an encounter with a Bigfoot at a young age, and his ears were ringing. And this was another famous serial killer. So there's a connection there.
Yeah, that's interesting.
We had a friend, Ralph Bennett of Haida, and he's from Heidelberg, Alaska, and he used to stay here a long time ago. But he said that Sasquatch will appear when children are in danger, or when women and children are in danger. So it was like they let everyone know that there's something wrong and to pay attention. And that was from a Haida tribal member. And then as far as local folks here, like the Snoqualmie and Salish belief, they have a similar thing where there was an ancient agreement between the humans and the world of Saskets where they would look out for each other. And so whenever one was in danger, the other would show up and protect each other's turf, that kind of thing. And as far as where she's from, what we've read together in the what's called the Headless Valley out of Fort Liard, there was another similar ancient pact that was made, an ancient agreement between the Nahanni, which is like a word for these wild, hairy men, these beings, these almost like Neanderthal type creatures that lived in the Headless Valley. And they made an agreement with the Dene people to look out for each other. So whenever the Dene were in trouble or women and children in trouble, these creatures would come down. They're humanoid, they're human, but just a little different. They'd come down and protect. So these are ancient stories, and it makes sense. Like, okay, so there's a serial killer, he's killing somebody out in the woods, and it's awakening this ancient agreement. I mean, these things are coming out and they're saying, okay, things are happening. I'm going to show myself. I'm going to make myself known. And this goes back thousands of years. These are based on real stories. I go back. These are agreements, I guess, between tribes, if you think about it. So
yeah. It's so knowing that those ancient stories and passing those things down I think they're really important because like when we first started talking, you were talking about how you imprint on the land, like just being there, you're making an impression on the land. And so all of those things, if they happened where you're at, can explain a lot of things moving forward and know, like, if an area needs cleansing or healing or some sort of something bigger, I think that all aligns.
Yeah. And then it's, what's important too is that, and this, I've said this on other interviews, and we've talked about this on other interviews, this is a consistent thing. But whenever you have knowledge that comes from a community, if you're working from within that community and people are gaining, from that, it tends to go a lot further. Like, so it's I guess you call it oh God, what do you call that? You call that having scruples, having a business ethic, or having standards for when you use culture. So like when you have a culture and you're using it and it's within your circle and everybody in that circle is gaining in a good way, you can never go wrong. That's what I'm trying to say. Yeah. So when you do go wrong is when you're on the outside of a circle and you're, taking something that's in that circle, but you're not in that circle, you're outside of that circle. And then you take that item or whatever it is, and it doesn't benefit those people that were in that circle. You haven't joined them. You haven't gone into that circle and joined them and benefited. You're on the outside. That's what needs to be talked about, because a lot of times people get in trouble for that because they're on the outside, and it's a delicate dance, so I guess, and it doesn't matter, like we said from the very beginning, skin color, ethnic background, language, religion, as long as you're inside that circle, it's that family circle, and everybody in that circle, your circle is winning or gaining, you're fine. It's only when you're taking from the outside. So let me give you a wild example. I take a design from Alaska, let's say it's from Anchorage, Alaska. I find some native design and I make a bunch of t-shirts, but I have no idea what the design means, and then I'm selling a bunch of t-shirts. Obviously that's an extreme example. But yeah, that's something that, just needs to be talked about in a gentle way. I don't want to shame anybody. That's not what I'm here to do. But like, yeah, it's something that's very interesting, because when you start talking about culture, we have a responsibility as human beings to just be aware, like, okay, who is our circle? What is, what are we part of? And who are we benefiting when we're doing what we're doing? And as long as those things all line up and you're benefiting everyone in your circle and everyone's gaining and everyone's being healed or, positively affected, you're fine. You're golden. You're good. You're good. It's as soon as you are taking from another circle and you're harming or you're taking from that, that's when you have to go, okay, wait, what am I doing here? Wait, it's a conscious, you have a conscience. You're like being aware.
Yeah.
So yeah, let's get light again. That was heavy. I don't want to talk about it anymore. I don't want to talk about it anymore, but there you go. I just wanted to say it and I said it. There we go.
Well, I think of it as, so like nature is abundant. So if you're living within the win-win solutions of nature, like you're watering the plants and you're picking the fruit and you're, so you're going through that process and it's a natural process and you're interacting with your environment in a natural way and you're not taking too much, then life will be abundant and everything will be abundant. But the moment that you start drilling into the earth and taking minerals that don't serve any, it's throwing something out of balance and then it's putting a balance somewhere else. So right there, you've tipped the balance. So I think it's all about trying to stay within that natural order where abundance is, because we all know that if we go against that natural order, that's when all hell breaks loose. I mean, that's when like the storms and the, lots of fires and all the things go wrong, so.
No, absolutely. And the more that you open yourself up and you really observe and you really think and you open up, your awareness, you naturally, I think human beings naturally have empathy and sympathy and can understand, but it's when you're blocked off from, you don't have an idea of what you're doing, but you're actually hurting someone or taking from someone or whatever. That's where the growth needs to happen. People need to open up even further and go, oh, I get it. I understand. There has to be that understanding.
Yeah.
And so, that's pretty wide open. There's no dogma that I'm saying, this has to be this and this has to be this. It's just in general. And like you said, I loved what you said about nature and abundance. I liked what you said about watering the plants. That is a great way to say it. I've never even said it that way, but I think I'm gonna.
Well, now you can when you can totally take it. It's all yours. Like that's why we share the stories, so that when now you have a couple more little tools in your tool belt, and I'm sure I have a couple more. Because that's how we share resources, and that's how we grow as a human family. Because like Patricia Ann Davis, my mentor, always says, we are five-fingered people. That's what we are. We are all a human family. And so once you embrace that wholly and holistically, I think that then we can start connecting and really making changes and making positive differences.
Oh yeah, I love it. That was great. Yeah. All right. Well, we can leave you with a little poem and a little song. How's that?
That sounds awesome.
Okay, so I used to sit on my grandfather's lap, and when I was 5 years old, as early as I can remember, he would always sing a little song to me. First, I'll share the lyrics, and then I'll sing the melody. So it goes like this. There was a little dog, his name was Jack. He pooped all over the railroad track. When the train come by, the poop flew high, hit the conductor right in the eye. The conductor says there's a bald-headed guy with one eye. He spit some chewing tobacco into my eye. And then when you sing it, there was a little dog, his name was Jack. He pooped all over the railroad track. When the train come by, the poop flew high, hit the conductor right in the eye. The conductor says there's a bald-headed guy with one eye. He spit some chewing tobacco into my eye. And that is a Gandy Dancer work song from our local railroad. So when the crew would work, they would work in unison. And the reason they call him a Gandy Dancer is everybody would move in a sort of coordinated dance as they are driving spikes, repairing the railroad, adding gravel, lifting up, leveling railroad ties. Basically, they are a track repair crew. Also, if a boxcar was derailed, they would get that car back up on the tracks. And there were many songs. And so Irish, there were a lot of Irish that worked on the railroad, as well African American, as well Filipino. You had Native American workers. And so there are songs that are hybrid songs of different styles. You oftentimes find Irish and African American styles fusing together. Yeah, very beautiful. So that song is a local work song that I shared with you. So
that's awesome.
There you go.
Yeah, I love that. I love that they had so much joy in their work that they're singing while they work. That's kind of idyllic. I know there's a lot of struggles and hardships that go with it, but the fact that they could ground themselves like that and all work together is really beautiful.
Yeah, there's a lot of material. There's a lot of music that is almost forgotten, but we have successfully salvaged it, and we're putting it back out into performances so that it stays alive, like living history. So
yep, I love it. It's so important. Yeah. It's really important work. I tell you, thank you. You guys are wonderful. They're really, really inspiring. And I did want to ask, this is more on the Sasquatch tour, the walking tour. I have a 6-year-old, and would that be something that they would tolerate, or?
It's age appropriate sort of thing?
Yeah.
Yeah, well, it really depends on the ages. Of course, if they are 5 or 6, of course, we're gonna be nice. We're not gonna say any bad words.
I won't say any cuss words, and I won't talk about grizzly murders as much. Awesome. Yeah, that would be totally fine. Our whole month of October is just chock full. So as you saw, I think you're on Facebook and Instagram, I'm pretty sure. So in fact, our first night is tomorrow night. We're having a group of people here. And we're going to do a nighttime walk to the cemetery. We're going to talk about some of the same things we've talked about today, but we're going to go into more depth and share a lot of the local, haunts that are within walking distance of our house here. And there's just so much more. I mean, literally I could talk, I'm not going to, for 9 hours straight. And I would still have more to talk about when it comes to this subject, because there's so much.
There's so much. It's true. Yeah. No, that's, well, I mean, I think everything you're doing, just keep doing it. I'm all for it. Oh, I had one other question. Throughout the year, not during Halloween, do you do full moon things, or do you keep doing stuff, or is it just mostly during Halloween time?
No, we just decided to be able to do more so the Halloween thing, because we haven't really in the past. We've maybe had 1 or 2 within October, but for the most part we do. We've done custom tours, we've done private tours, we've done groups of tours up to, I think the most that we had was about 65 people.
65, yeah.
Whoa.
Yeah, and then as small as a group of 2.
Yeah. So the answer is yes. We do them year round, but the answer is October seems to be an obvious month for paranormal,
and a lot.
But we still have a lot of tours during the year, even when it's not.
Yeah, a lot of
October.
A lot of our followers wanted us to be able to do an overnight. And then, of course, we've also been requested to be able to do a lot of repeat tours of the area. So, yeah, absolutely. I mean, we definitely were out there whenever people call.
That's awesome. Yeah.
They just put a call out to us. Hey, you guys, we're really wanting to be able to have you guys do a tour, and then we'll set it up and we'll pick a date, and
that's amazing, because I do think there's a reason that on my last interview I was talking to a witch, and she was saying that during Halloween is the harvest time, and it's the time when the veil is the thinnest. So it really makes sense to me hearing that you would be very busy during this time, because it's probably the best time for viewing.
Yeah, that tends to be the case. Religions and cultures all over the world, they talk about this time of year being the thinnest veil. Now, when it comes specifically to this valley and this area, you have the winter is the opposite in the spirit world as the summer. So during the summertime, it's actually winter. And during the day, it's actually during the night in the spirit world. And during the winter, it's actually summer. And everything is opposite in the Salish world. Mm-hmm. So that's why during the winter, there was 3 months of storytelling and feasting and everything, because it's summertime in the spirit world and everybody's having a party on the other side during the winter. And that's like right now, that's when the music and the dancing and the storytelling really starts to heat up. And then boy, oh boy, all through the winter, there were people here, just a shout out to these storytellers, amazing storytellers who I've never met because they're long deceased. But there were storytellers here that had 3 months of storytelling memorized, including songs and dances and characters all in their head. And they would every single night in this valley 500 years ago, they would recite another chapter of the next part of the epic story. And it took 3 months to tell the whole story. If you can imagine how much information, oh my God, you got to give them a shout out because that is amazing. That is absolutely mind-blowingly amazing to be able to memorize all that stuff. So
yeah, that is amazing. A true shaman. Yeah.
And we have 2 grandkids. So Cammie has 2 boys, Caden and Caleb. And I'll tell you what, they come over here and they love the campfire and they want to sit and listen to Bigfoot stories and ghost stories for hours and hours. And that's our job, is to be grandparents, just like my grandparents did for me. We're doing for them and they love it. They never want to leave. They just want to stay. They just want to move in with grandma and grandpa, and that's fine.
Oh, yeah. That's how I was when I was a kid. I had an apartment at my grandparents' house. It was my bedroom, but my grandpa called it my apartment because I only wanted to be there. I just wanted to like hang out with my grandparents all the time. I'm excited to go on one of your tours and hear more stories and just continue hearing stories. And I'm going to subscribe to your guys' Patreon and read your posts. I haven't had time to do it yet, but I plan on it.
Boy, there is so much on there. And if you're into UFOs and
see, this is the thing. I could talk for just like you for hours and hours about this stuff because I have so many experiences that I can't quite explain. But then the more I talk to people, the more I'm like, one of my friends is like, "Oh, you were abducted," and I'm like, "Wait, really?" And this is like in 1996. You know what I mean? Like, and I just kept telling the story because it was so like unexplainable in my mind that I would try to make sense of it. And then it seemed like every time I'd tell it, I'd learn a little more, or someone would say something. And then I just kept telling it until finally I realized that I think something unexplained happened and I have a loss of time and like all the typical things. And it took me decades to kind of unwind it and figure out who knows what it's all about. But
yes, exactly. It's kind of like our circle. Remember we were talking about our circle? Yeah.
Exactly.
There you go.
Yeah.
All right.
Awesome. All right. I'll let you guys go. I don't want to take up too much of your time.
Yeah.
Bye. It was really fun.
See you later. Yeah.
If you like what I'm creating here on my virtual campfire, please subscribe and give me 5-star reviews so that I know these conversations are worthwhile to others. I love doing this and I hope you love listening. Thank you.